I'm Sandee Brawarsky. I'm the culture editor of the Jewish Week, and I'm really happy to be here in New York with Rabbi Leon Morris. But before we start discussing the complexities of love, which is our topic, especially fish love, let me just introduce our participants who are my friends. So Hanan Harchol is a brilliant, award-winning multimedia visual artist and the creator of JewishFoodForThought.com. We're going to see some of his really amazing animations later on. These apply Jewish teachings to contemporary life. Hanan has exhibited his paintings, drawings, videos, and multimedia installations around the country. Rabbi Leon Morris is an inspiring educator who specializes in adult Jewish study. He created really exceptional institutions of Jewish learning in New York City before making Aliyah with his family in June 2014. Leon now serves as Vice President for Israel Programs at the Shalom Hartman Institute, North America, and co-director of Haggadah. Ralph was a friend of mine and of all of ours who died last year at age 100. He was really an exceptional leader of the Jewish people, and I think Ralph stood for love of people and love of humanity, and that's really what made him such a great leader. So I'm really happy to be here thinking about Ralph. I want to start by thinking about fish love, whatever that is, but maybe we can start our discussion by looking at the first animation. We're going to look at a piece of it, but you should know that everybody can look at JewishFoodForThought.com and see the entire animation. Really terrific.
Thank you. Sandy, I wanted to take this moment before I play the animation to first of all thank you and Leon for joining me in this. You're such inspirations to me, and this animated series would not have been possible without the Covenant Foundation, which funded the animation, and the Foundation for Jewish Culture, which was my fiscal sponsor. I also want to thank Adina Steinsaltz and Karen Sponder of the Global Day of Jewish Learning for inviting me, and for Lily Meyer for helping with the technical. So before I play the animation, also I want to say that we were all communicating beforehand, and this is not really part of the script, but our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of the tragedy in Paris. I think it feels a little strange now talking about love when there's so much pain, but I think that this theme is actually maybe the gateway to finding some kind of healing and peace in the world. Bezrat Hashem. So let's play a section of.
So, what's this news you wanted to tell us? Oh, it's actually not that much. Oh, forget it. It's really not a big deal. What's not a big deal? Okay, I'll tell you, but I just don't want to get into a whole long conversation. I just want to tell you the news and move on to another topic. Shoshana and I are breaking. See, this is exactly what I mean. Can we just forget I said anything? What did you do? Look, it's mutual. We're both okay with it. What about your chicken? Can't you see the sun is having a crisis? Hanan, what did you do? I didn't do anything. If you want to know, we're just not feeling it anymore. But she's such a nice girl. I told you, he's going to end up like Roti, 50 and single. I knew I shouldn't have told you. Look, it's fine. I'm fine. Shoshana's fine. Matzo ball soup is fine. Whatever. The point is, there are other fish in the sea. Fish love. Excuse me? I agree. Fish love. What's fish love? You don't know the story? It's a famous story. The rabbi from Kotsk was walking down the street. He saw a man eating a fish and enjoying the fish very much. So the rabbi says, wow, sure, rabbi enjoying that fish? And the man says, yes, I love fish. So the rabbi says, really, you love fish? You hooked the fish out of the water, you gutted its insides out, you fried it, and now you're eating it. You don't love fish, you love yourself. So what are you saying? Now I can't eat fish anymore? Of course you can. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a fish. But don't kid yourself that you love the fish. First of all, it's just a figure of speech. And how does this have anything to do with Shoshana? You loved Shoshana. As long as you were feeling it. As long as she was providing you what you needed, you loved her. But that's not love. It's fish love. Look, it's complicated. I'm looking for something else. My life is going in a different direction. It's nobody's fault. I just always had a certain picture in my mind of what I want out of my life and what I want in a relationship. And honestly, what I think I really need is to find myself. You know, I need to spend a little time focusing on me. Did you count 12 times? 12 times what? In one sentence, you refer to yourself 12 times. I think it's a record. It's no surprise. Everything these days is I like, I don't like, I this, I that, I phone, I fold, I can't. That's a good one. You've got to be honest. I have to be myself. To love someone else. Here he goes again. I phone, I fold, I can't. You know, Hanan, the word for love in Hebrew is ahava. At the center of that word is hav, which means to give. There's no mention of I, me, my. To love is to give. Are you saying I didn't give Shoshana enough? I took her on that trip to Florida. I spent a fortune on her 6-month anniversary. I gave a lot. I gave because I loved her. But you see, Hanan, you have it completely backwards. You don't give because you love. You love because you give. I have no idea what you just said. The point is, before I can love someone, I need to understand who I am. I need to find myself. But you're looking in all the wrong places. What do you mean? The more you focus on yourself, the further away you get from discovering who you really are. That's a paradox.
Many times as I watch these animations,
I find them funny, and they really make me think anew of all these issues. So I think we know what fish love is. That's a really great definition. But what about self-love? And
Leon?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I think that in the midst of this amazing video that you produced about love, wrapped in this are a lot of issues that are about love and about a lot else. And I think that this challenge of kind of getting outside of ourselves is the primary challenge of our time for certainly for human relationships, for love, for friendship. I think it's a big issue for building community. It's a huge issue in religious life. We're thoroughly modern, and we see the self and the fulfillment of the self as primary. And I don't think there's a way to get out of that entirely. I think that's our starting place. But the value of the self has come to, I think, eclipse a lot of other important values. And so, you know, I think about this a lot in terms of religious communities. How do we discuss a sense of obligation and responsibility to each other and a sense of duty if our primary obsession is the self? Some have used the phrase the idolatry of the self. So I think the question for all of us on both the scale of a relationship between two people and on a much bigger level is how do we move out of that? How do we come to understand that we are not the measure of all things, that the community has some kind of, or other has some kind of commanding presence in our lives, that the responsibility that I have to the other is part of what makes me me. And I think in the video that's part of what your parents in that probably fictitious conversation are trying to convey to you, that what really makes you most fully you is to have some sense of responsibility to the other.
was definitely what I was after. So I do believe that there is an importance in self-love. But what I found was, at least for myself and the people that I was around, is that the pendulum was swung way, way in the balance of self-love. So it began with friends of mine, whether female or male, they would all have, and were single, they would all have a list of what they wanted to get out of their partner. They would want someone who is, and then the list would be there. And women would have a long list, men would have a much shorter list, but they would all have a list of what they wanted to get out of a relationship. And in studying the Jewish view on love, I saw that it's actually, turned on its head, that the focus becomes what can you give into the relationship as opposed to what can you receive. And I found when I tried doing that, when I tried focusing on what can I give into this relationship, I actually found that I received way, way more than when I was calculating and trying to see how could I amass the parts that I wanted. So it seems counterintuitive, but when you're really focusing on what can you give into this, you end up getting more. That's my dad said, the paradox. And I just want to add really quick also that these ideas, it is a fictional conversation, a fictional conversation, and the conversation is based on all of the study that I did with my incredible teachers. So if you watch the animation on jewishfoodforthought.com, the credits are about 3 minutes long, and you'll see, all of the teachers that I studied with, and Leon, of course, is one of them.
About that, Hanan. But just go back a few steps. Like, how did this all begin? And I think Leon had a part in that, right?
I was really completely secular. Born in kibbutz Kinneret, and my dad would tell us that religion is make believe and nonsense, and but his parents were Orthodox. When they came to Israel, they dropped religion completely. And the same on my mom's side. At age 39, I participated in a project funded by the Covenant Foundation that was actually led by Rabbi Leon Morris, and it was to create a cinematic version of the Passover Haggadah. 11 artists got together, and each one did a section of the Passover Haggadah in either video or animation. The requirement, though, was that we had to meet once a month for a text study led by Leon Morris. And the conversation that we were having in the Jewish text study, I thought it would be all about guilt and shame and what you should do and shouldn't do. Instead, the conversation that we were having was all about the human condition, philosophy, psychology. And I was thinking to myself, this isn't Judaism, or this is not what I thought about, Judaism. So I started reading the Torah for the first time as a result of this inspiring experience with Rabbi Morris and the other artists, and I started seeing that in the Torah there's a lot of wisdom that applies to contemporary life, and that's how the Covenant Foundation and Harleen Appelman and John Blinderman took a huge risk and applied this project. It's been immensely rewarding personally and successful.
What a great idea
that you had. And with this you had in mind that the artists would then go forth and continue teaching in their art?
We really wanted, this was when I was directing the Skirball Center for Adult Jewish Learning in Manhattan, and we really wanted the artists to create visual commentaries to some of the classic Jewish texts. And I want to just say two things about what Hanan just said. One is that many of you know that Rabbi Akiva only started to study at the age of 40, so Hanan has 1 year up on him. And secondly, I really believe that this is one of those classic situations where the student becomes the teacher. And I've learned so much from Hanan, and I think that the body of work that he's created in the last, 4 years, is just an enormous resource for Jewish study. I've used it. I used it with teenagers and adults in my synagogue in Sag Harbor, New York. I used it here at the Hartman Institute with our gap year program, Chavruta. It's really an amazing body of work, and I think that it required, our colleague Rabbi Leon produced a study guide to use with these videos because there's so much in it. This is very rich parshanut commentary. And it really is a product of, I don't know, how many hours would you spend, Hanan, for each film, each video?
So the amount of hours involved is animation itself takes about 3 months to animate, but I spend about 4 months studying with rabbis and text scholars. And thank you so much for mentioning Rabbi Leon study guides, because people that watch the animation and enjoy it, on the same website, jewishfoodforthought.com, next to each animation is a study guide showing just some of the text sources. But for each animation, there would be an average 100 pages of notes that I will create in talking to all of these rabbis and text scholars. And the strange thing is, you know, I started the project thinking that there would be a clear answer. And in a typical Talmudic way, you know, the more I was learning, the less I felt that I knew. And it just kept expanding, expanding, expanding. I cut it off 3-4 months of study. And I just say, okay, now I've got to make the leap and put what I've learned so far.
So I've had the pleasure of both of you, and I thank you. But let's get back to love. Like, why is love so hard to find?
Okay, so in my animations, in Love and Fear Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, the reason I call it Love and Fear is because I think that to really take yourself out of the equation and to really focus on the other person and to give in that kind of way that forms this kind of bond, it's very scary to do that. And I think that the reason we keep concentrating on the self is because deep down inside, at least I can speak for myself, I think that there's a certain fear. Fear of many, many different things, but that fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of not even being in a relationship at all, the fear of what other people are thinking, and the list goes on and on and on. And the majority of these fears are subconscious. So instinctively, what we do when we're afraid is we focus back just on ourselves. The problem is the minute we're focusing on ourselves, even though we're in a relationship, we're really just using the other person as a way to kind of go back to me.
I think we're really hard on the other often. I just want to take a look at the second clip, and then let's continue.
Okay. The other clip.
Can't see their own faults. But luckily, God made other people who function as mirrors. The faults we see in other people are actually our own. I think she's talking about you, Hanan.
Me? But I have good reason to be afraid. He could fire me.
Why? Because your students are winning awards? Because you're doing such a good job? Instead of focusing on your good wall, your bridge, you're letting his reality of fears become your reality. If he's blind, then so are you. The next time he comes into the classroom screaming, remember to focus on the bridge. And remember that he is our teacher, and we all have a lot to learn. Just in case, I would stay far away from him and the alligator.
So, just to give context to that, basically, the idea is that when we're so busy criticizing, so again, the majority of the conversations would be everything that's wrong. I can't believe he did this, or I can't believe she did this, and we're listing all of these things. What I found in my study, and Baal Shem Tov talks about this, is that if you're really good at identifying something that's wrong with someone, chances are you have that quality yourself. That's why you're so good at recognizing. So what happens is these things that make us afraid and then accusatory, we can actually use that fear as as a guide to teach ourselves about something that we did not recognize about ourselves, instead of pointing the finger at others. Leon, did you have something to?
Well, I love your application of the Baal Shem Tov's mirror theory, and I think that provides a great challenge of Musar, of cultivating our interpersonal characteristics, that when we see faults in others, to see them really as a reflection of ourselves, and thereby have an opportunity to grow. I wanted to pick up on this relationship between fear and love. And I think it runs very broadly, that the two go together, and you're showing how they go together in the midst of human relationships. The classic association of fear and love is with regard to God, that the Torah itself pairs those two qualities together. For instance, in Sefer Devarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 10, it says, Va'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shoel me'imach. What does the eternal your God require of you, or ask of you? Ki im yir'a et Hashem Elokecha lelechet b'kol derachav ula'ahava oto. That you should fear, and we'll talk about what that might mean in a moment, but you should fear the eternal your God, and walk in God's ways, and love God. V'lavod et Hashem Elokecha, and serve the eternal your God, b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha, with all your heart and soul. So very early on, there is this duality between love and fear, and the Rambam, Maimonides, in the Mishneh Torah, talks about what's the way to love God and what's the way to fear God. And Maimonides writes that when a person thinks about God's great and marvelous deeds and creation, and sees in them God's incomparable and infinite wisdom, a person will immediately love God and praise God. And then he writes, when a person thinks about all these things, he or she will immediately recoil and be afraid and come to see themselves as a small, lowly creature standing with insignificant intelligence before the creator of the universe, who is perfect. And that dialectic, or that pairing of love and fear is on the one hand reaching out and wishing to know more, and recoiling and feeling small. Now, it's not the same with the other, who's our spouse or our partner or our lover. But I think there is something that you're picking up on in the video, and something to be gained here by having an element of, we might not want to call it fear, but let's call it awe. An element in relationships of feeling a bit unworthy of the other person's love, of feeling, let's say, a heightened awareness of how fragile relationships are, a fear that something could come in to destroy or harm that relationship. And I think there's something of the Rambam's element of fear or reverence within the relationship, of when stepping back and taking stock of what it means to be loved, and what it means to love, and what it means to have found and built a life with this person, and the everything that had to happen for that to happen. I think there is this sense of feeling small. The way that the Rambam imagines, we think of how great God is and how vast the universe is, of feeling very small. I think in the face of love, there's also this kind of smallness. And I think that's a kind of fear, per se, of feeling small in the face of the existence of love, and that you merit getting to share that experience.
This idea between fear and awe. So I feel like sometimes when I'm looking at the texts, people would say, no, that means God. And then other times, the same word, would end up being referring to some kind of like pachad or fear or terror. I think that there is a relationship. I think that there is an overwhelming quality to relationships. There is you do realize how fragile you are. It does expose your vulnerability, and I think that the two are paired.
There's a beautiful Nachman that you talk about later on in the series about narrow bridge. I wonder if you could tell us more about that.
Rabbi Nachman was talking about the quote that he has, "His life is a narrow bridge. The main thing is not to be afraid." And the way it was explained to me by one of my teachers is that if you imagine, walking across a row of tiles on the floor, you basically say, just stay on these tiles. And in Israel, they have very broad tiles. So it's easy to walk from point A to point B of the tiles. But then you say, imagine if on the left and the right of the tiles is an abyss with alligators. Now it would be difficult to walk because you're afraid about the alligators, you're afraid about falling. But what Rabbi Nachman is pointing out is the challenge is still the same. If I just ask you to walk across this row of tiles, it's a simple thing to do. So if you just focus on the task at hand, if you focus on being in the moment and what you're doing right now, that's actually fine. You can do it. You have the ability to do it. And we psych ourselves out, we sabotage ourselves by worrying about all the things that can go wrong. And I think that then, at least for me, also ties together with God, because Leon was saying, recoil then in awe and being overwhelmed. However, then you remember that, okay, so yes, you may be insignificant, yes, it may be overwhelming, but at the end of the day, hey, God loves you, you're good enough. Human beings are it's part of the big part, and there's a certain comfort that comes in there. I just want to say that, I also became a little bit more observant after my father passed away, and in the middle of the animated, and two things happened. Very short period of time. The birth of my first son and my father died. And these were two things that I was always a very intellectual person, political, two things that just went beyond intellect. They were so overwhelming, they were so unexplainable that I recoiled, right, in the awe of it. But then, where did I turn to? I turned to saying Kaddish for my father once a week, and somehow in praising God, in saying this prayer, and there was a comfort. There was comfort in connecting with something that was larger than me, and I found then this unconditional love that out of the overwhelming experience, if this makes any sense.
I love using the word awe sometimes instead of fear, helps us make a lot more sense. Let's once again go to the clip. I think when we think about fear and love,
and the paradox, I think it explains really well in this section.
I love it. The famous saying is, life is a narrow bridge. You need not to be afraid. The main thing is not to be afraid. No fear. No fear. Micha, watch out. Can we stop talking about all of this nonsense? Now, listen to your husband. Obviously, it's very important. Don't let your mother put all these crazy ideas in your head. Fear is what motivates you to pay attention to how you are driving, which keeps you alive. Fear helps you not walk. So, and fear will take to be happy by finding a nice girl. She'll not end up 50 years old and single like Ruth. Wow, Daddy, you sure know how to spoil a party. Help me out here, Mom. Your father is absolutely correct. Fear is complicated. On the one hand, fear can blind you and paralyze. But fear can also sharpen you and focus your life. The biggest paradox is that fear is actually an essential ingredient in finding real love. What did you say? Your mother said that your father is absolutely correct. I heard that. And that if you don't marry a nice girl soon, you will end up 50 years old and single like Ruth. I heard that too. But what did you say about fear being essential for you? Realize how fear becomes finding love. You have to first recognize that fear is usually what prevents real love. Unfortunately, the negative type of fear is the basis of most of our so-called love. It even happens with the deepest love. For example, with our own grandson. He's so cute. We love Dan so much that we bought him a $100 outfit for his birthday. And he looks beautiful. All the grandparents were commenting how beautiful he looks. He does look beautiful and very cute. But he is 1 year old. Was that entirely for him? Or at least partially for us to feel better about ourselves? Fish love. Most of what we call love is based on fear. Fear of shame, punishment, fear of not being worth loving, or one of the biggest fears of all is the fear of being alone. But ultimately, when we are in a relationship because of fear, that's not love, because it's just feeding our own ego.
So why do we live in such fear of being alone?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I think that human beings naturally are social creatures. I see we have a newborn. Noah's 9 weeks old, and he's smiling. I see in the room, the doctor checked him. She says, "Oh, his social skills are great." The doctor came and smiled at Noah. I think we're social people. I think ultimately we want and need to be around other people. But it's very scary. It's very, very, very scary to be in a relationship because you're vulnerable. You know, if you need someone, and if you make yourself vulnerable with someone, there's a risk involved. For most people, we want to have the comfort of the relationship, but still stay super safe. And ultimately, when you really become close to somebody, by default, you make yourself vulnerable. So we don't want to be alone, but we're also scared.
Young children, and we've heard a little bit about grandparent love. I wonder if you both could talk about what it is to love your children and how that might be different from other kinds of love. Leon?
So there's a famous passage in the Gemara and the Talmud that says that everyone is jealous of everyone else except a father for his son and a teacher for his student. We can expand it in a less gender-specific way. A parent for their child, says the Talmud, isn't jealous, but in general, everybody's jealous. And that's probably not true. When I mentioned this quote to people whose children are older, they point out that it may in fact be a little more complex than that Talmudic passage, but still, I think what the Talmud is suggesting is that there's a special kind of love and selflessness that in some ways is paradoxically rooted in the self, that our children are, in many cases, they are creations of ours. In many cases, they look and act like mini versions of ourselves. In all cases, they're sort of raised to be, in some ways, like us. So I think that And I think what you were speaking about in terms of the vulnerability is present there as well. You know, I think more than anything else, I want my children to be healthy and to be safe, and the sense of vulnerability is felt whenever one thinks about the world that we've brought them into. And I think there's something about the love of our children that, and becoming a parent, we became a parent, Hanan, a father, about the same time. I think there's a way in which it changes one's thinking about all people. That suddenly I felt like I had a heightened realization that everybody I was in touch with, a beggar on the street, or someone across a counter or a table, they were babies. They were somebody's child, and they were the repository of so much hope and so many dreams. And I think that in terms of universalizing this message of love that comes from a young, that comes kind of given to us through young children, it's also a sensitivity to realize how a child deprived of love or of attention, or a child that experiences a trauma, God forbid, at an early age, becomes someone who really deserves our compassion and not just our judgment. So I feel like you don't have to be a parent to have an expansive notion of love, but I think becoming a parent presents an opportunity to really expand our notion of how love plays out on all kinds of levels in the world.
I think that's beautifully said, Leon. And I guess I want to add to it that when I became a parent, this. Okay, so artists by default, I can't say artists, artists that being an artist is very narcissistic. It's kind of an expansion on when you're a little kid and you make a picture, and then your mom would put the picture on the refrigerator and say, look at this great picture that you made. It's kind of like an artist goes out and wants to continue, look at this great thing. And when I had a child, all of the things that I've done, all the things that I made that I thought were so great, none of it mattered in comparison to one hair on this kid's head. So it was this simultaneous feeling of, it doesn't matter what this kid will ever do. I mean, I know they're going to be a teenager someday, and we're going to fight, and, you know, who knows. I'm always going to love them. The idea of unconditional love was really made real for me when I had a child. At the same time, I've never had more constant worry in my life than from the moment that my child was born. So you get this unbelievable gift of experiencing unconditional love and this permanent worry that's also never going to go away. And so again, I don't feel like these teachings on love and fear would have really sunk in had I not had a child. And now, taking it back to relationships, I'm realizing how much more forgiving I am of my child than I am of my wife. You know, with my wife, I hold her to this kind of unrealistic standard, and yet with my child, it's my child, you know, somehow. And I think that there's something really to learn there, you know, too.
That we become critical, and that, you know, in many cases, you know, it's really hard to maintain love over time. Thoughts about that?
Leon, do you want to take that first, or do you want me to?
Well, one of the associations that I have, it's a common, it's a well-known rabbinic drasha, that interpretation that derives from the prayer service in Ashkenazi custom. In the second blessing before the Shema, in the morning, begins with the words Ahava Rabbah, you have loved us with a great love. Ahava Rabbah. And in the evening, it begins with the words Ahavat Olam, an eternal love. And it provides an interesting lens about the lifespan of love and how love develops over time. That the interpretation is that in the morning, you say, love is great, Ahava Rabbah, love is so great. It's the daytime, the beginning of a couple's relationship, and everything is sunshine, everything is joy, everything is light. But in the inevitable events that life brings to human beings, love has to be more than that. And the idea is that when nighttime comes, as it always does, we have to somehow transfer that Ahava Rabbah, that great love of the light of the day, into Ahavat Olam, into an eternal love, a love that has withstood all of the challenges that life presents, and has grown stronger. It's grown different, but grown stronger as a result. And that the challenge of marriage and any kind of committed relationship is how to kind of keep faith from that transition from Ahava Rabbah, of great love, to Ahavat Olam, to an eternal love.
I have something to add. First of all, that's beautiful. The great love. So the thing that I wanted to add is, okay, so it's just a little anecdote that I heard on Fresh Air with Terry Gross. She was interviewing a famous film director, I believe, and he was married for many, many years. And she suddenly asked him, how are you able to be married for so many years and keep the relationship so great? And he said, you know, everyone talks about communication and all these things. He says, I'll tell you what it really is. He says, when you find somebody that can stand you, that's the person to be with. Because he says after 30 years, the only things that are left are the things that you can't stand about the person. Those are the things that you see. And if you still love the person anyway, then that's it. And I think this is actually a good segue into the fourth clip, because I think what happens is you know the person so well that all those things that were so new and fresh, they're still there, but they're not new and fresh anymore because you know them so well. So the only things that stand out are the things that are different than you, that you would do differently. You know, like, why doesn't he? You know, like things like that. Things are others. And I think the challenge actually is to say, so this thing that is different than the way I would do it, this thing that is other than me, is foreign to me, instead of constantly fighting it and rejecting it, embrace that other as part of the whole. And again, it seems paradoxical that, you know, when you want to get something, you would actually give. But if that thing that annoys you, if you actually try to find a way to embrace it, and actually incorporate it into the person that you love, then this new plane opens up. It was unknown to you before. You're actually embracing, hugging. One of my teachers was hugging the other, hugging that space in between you. And I want to, there's a midrash about that, about the space between people, and I put it into one of my animations for part 3. Again, it's all, that one is not posted on 4x24, but you can see all the animations for free at jewishfoodforthought.com. I'm going to play that clip.
There is an old legend that tells that Adam and Eve were originally connected They were one body. But the problem was they were facing away from each other. So God cut them in half. He separated them so they could turn around and face one another and meet. But then they were separated from each other. They weren't connected to one another. Sounds like something from the but what's your point? When you meet another person, you are confronting someone who is not you. You are facing otherness. It's unpredictable. It's very scary. So most people just make instead of letting the other person exist as someone else. That's so true. That's why the first 3 months of a relationship feels so good. Everything about your partner is you actually don't know anything about it. You're feeling what you don't know is what you want the other person to be. You convince yourself that it's that person, that it's actually just a reflection of your own ego. But real love can't exist with it. Real love needs to be created in the space between the two people, without ego. That space between the two people is the unknown, the uncertainty, the otherness, the fear. This doesn't sound very easy. It's not easy, that's for sure. But fear is always pointing to something that is hidden. They say that when we're falling, we should be happy because we're being taught how to get back up. If we let fear paralyze us, we will rush to judgment, the worst thing of all. But if we can see that the fear is actually a challenge, if we embrace the fear as an opportunity to discover something deeper, something more, then fear can become a catalyst to grow beyond ourselves. And it is in that space, beyond ourselves, without ego, where we can ultimately find our true self, where we can find meaning, and where real love exists. I told you that fear is important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, it's my teacher. So this most of these teachings. Okay, so first there's that midrash, but this idea of fear being part of love came from Ma'oz Tali Kahana. They talked to me about it. Also, Rabbi writes about God in a very loving.
You also
mean to you?
So I hear resonances in Hanan's work also of Martin Buber, of love being not a relationship between subject and object, but between as existing between two subjects, a relationship of mutuality and reciprocity. I think I hear that in your work, Hanan. Whether it came to you directly from Buber or via one of your teachers. What does it mean to be in a relationship where both people are the subject, and in which God sort of serves as that space between two people who are both subjects?
Definitely Buber. Yes. Buber was definitely part of it. And I agree. Yes.
So let's get about finding love. I think it's so elusive for so many people. I know that I
enjoy making matches
and have had some success bringing people together. I'm wrong many more times than I'm right, but it's a great joy. And Leon, you as a rabbi, I imagine that you get to do this, and you also perform marriages often. Well, actually, I don't know how often, but I know you've done several beautiful ones. What is that experience like for you?
So I've only made one match. You've made many, Sandee, and I know of at least two of yours. For me, when I've been a Masader Kiddushin, the officiant at a wedding, I always feel like it's a rare moment of generosity and lack of cynicism from everybody present. I've counseled younger colleagues that it's very hard to be too sentimental or corny at a wedding because people's hearts are really open. And I think that that's why the liturgy of the wedding, the Sheva Brachot, the 7 blessings, are so much focused on the redemption of the world. You know, what an outlandish idea that the world can be redeemed, that the world can be better. But I think what happens at a wedding is people look at this couple and you see that they're in love, and as a guest at the wedding, you share in their joy, and you look at them and you feel, at least for those 20 minutes that they're under the chuppah, you feel as if maybe anything is possible. And then these blessings talk about what might be possible, that it might be possible to return to the Garden of Eden, that it might be possible that there could be heard in the cities of Judah and in the courtyards of Jerusalem, Kol Sason v'Kol Simcha, Kol Chatan v'Kol Kala, the voice of gladness and joy and the bride and groom and children playing. And I think it's a window into moments of really pure love, or a real awareness that love and the possibility of transformation on a larger scale beyond these two people is possible. I'll just say, in a way, it's kind of the inverse of lahavdil. The opposite end is that everything around the funeral is called chesed shel emet, true loving kindness. The idea that everything that you're doing, because it can't, the favor can't be repaid to you, this is considered to be like the truest, the highest level of loving kindness. I think the inverse is that at a wedding, maybe it's the truest openness to geula, to redemption, to transformation, that the world can be different, that love can really have an impact on our world, something like that.
So, first of all, Leon, I think everyone can see why Leon was such an inspiring and moving force that turned me to Judaism. So maybe we'll have a teacher like Leon inspiring us like this. It's just beautiful. So it's making me think. So number one, my son was asking me the other day, what's God? So I said, God is love, and he got it, because when he says I love you, Daddy, and he knew it was like that was absolutely, that's what he needed to hear. God is love, and tying us back to horrible tragedies that are happening around the world now. To me, the only hope is in love, is in people somehow seeing it deep down inside. We all begin and end the same way, and we're all social creatures. Everyone was born to parents, and that if we can somehow, I know that it sounds so utopian and maybe silly, but if we can somehow connect to that part, there's a purity. I'll give an example. When saw the 3-year-old boy washing ashore as in the refugees, suddenly people started giving up their political opinions, and it came down at the end to seeing this beautiful 3-year-old boy who was so innocent, dying in this tragedy. So what happens is, I feel that within that pain, this access back inside. One thing that I like to do sometimes with people is I like to look at them and imagine what were they like, and you just see that we all started. That's a good thing. That's a good. So Picasso said that his whole adult life trying to paint like a child. So the idea is you learn all of these things, but then after you learn these things, you want to then forget them, so you can go back to this purity and innocence and love that starts it all, and reconnect to that. And that's kind of what I mean by so I guess I'll just add one more quick thing. When I was reading the Torah for the first time, I got to this portion in Deuteronomy with curses, and it was just so horrific that I just stopped reading. And it took me many, many months to continue reading. But it was in researching this part that, you know, embracing the fear, embracing the ugly, embracing the darkness as part of the whole, that's when you actually get to this deeper sense that, and this is going to sound really kooky, but that the love can actually be so deep that the love can actually change all of those negatives too. And the most tangible analogy that I can give is that, you know, I'm thinking about some of the horrible things I said to my mom when I was a teenager, right? And I'm a teacher of teenagers now, so I see some of the horrible things that they say. I love them anyway, despite, because there's a certain investment that you make as a teacher and a parent where you become part of them. So you see your worst qualities in them too, and their worst qualities in everything. It's all one. It all becomes united in this unconditional love. And I feel like the curses come in the end. I mean, I'm not a scholar in this, but I feel like they come in the end so that you're built up with a lot of reserve, then come the curses, and then, you know, after the curses, there's still then this kind of hope. The Torah begins and ends with an act of chesed. You know, it begins with clothing out of the creation of the world, you know, this act of unconditional, selfless kindness, and it ends with burying the dead, right? With burying the dead. Am I right, Leon? So it begins and ends with an act of chesed. Ultimately, it's all about this selfless, unconditional kindness that ultimately holds all of it in it, even the darkness. Leon?
I'm with you. Amen.
Wonder if living in Israel for you heightens some of these issues of love?
Well, I think that you know, there's this famous Talmudic passage that there's 10 measures of wisdom that God gave to the world, and 9 are in the land of Israel, and 1 in the rest of the world, and 10 measures of beauty, 9 in Jerusalem, 1 in the rest of the world, 10 measures of sorrow. So I feel like there's a lot of love here. And I think that maybe because of the uncertainty of the future, maybe this is in slightly a romanticization of an Oleh Hadash, of a new immigrant, but it feels to me like the place of love, particularly the love of family, is very strong here. That it's acceptable in the most high-powered jobs to come in late because your child has some kind of a ceremony, of which there are many in school, the first prayer book, Siddur ceremony, or the first Chumash, the first Torah ceremony. And I think you see in the public square a lot of affection of children to their parents and parents to their children. Even soldiers, you know, it's not an unusual thing. You're a soldier, but you try to get home for Shabbat and to be in your parents' home for Shabbat dinner. And I think that it's much more culturally acceptable, culturally encouraged to see fathers in particular be affectionate toward their children, toward their sons, something that you don't always see as much in an American context. And I wonder if it's kind of part of a larger thing of living life to its fullest, and love is such an important component, maybe the most important component of life. And I think it does play out here in a major, accentuated kind of way.
Right. Yeah, it's wow. I mean, it makes me want to visit Israel. you should be doing the tourist spots for them. It's beautiful. That's true. When I'm thinking about it, it is true. It's very, very much oriented around family. So it just leads me to kind of, again, one kind of pop culture reference, even though my students don't remember this now anymore, but if you remember the television series The Sopranos, and The Sopranos was created by David Chase, and David Chase was interviewed again by Terry. He was saying that only was to create The Sopranos after the birth of his son. So what happens is only once his son was born, I hope I'm quoting this right, but only once his son was born did all the relationships. He was now not only a son, but he was now a father to a son. There's this kind of continuity, and I think that deep down inside, past all the fear with that, I think that human beings have a certain instinct for survival and an instinct for hopefulness, and an instinct to be social, to be around other people. And with the gruesome experiments that were done in the war, how much what babies really need is contact and love. And I think there was also the experiment of the monkey where they were I forgot which scientist it was, but they were kind of starving the monkey, and they gave the monkey two options. One was to go for food, and the other one was to go into this kind of stick figure with a blanket. And some of the monkeys, they might have grabbed some food, but they immediately went and laid down in the blanket in this stick figure. Ultimately, they were really striving for is comfort and love. And I think if we can just find the recipe to get past the fear, and maybe even to harness the fear as a way to kind of show us something more about ourselves, trusting that if we can get past the fear, we can actually get to that spot. Speaking about Israel, I want to tell a little anecdote. Do you have a minute? Okay. So one of my teachers was, when the Gaza conflict first broke out, it was around Ramadan. Canada was and he went to his mechanic and got his car fixed, and always gave the mechanic more money. So the mechanic says, "You gave me too much money." And Paul says, "Yeah. I know that it's Ramadan right now at this time, and I know that there are people in your community that don't have money to buy gifts for their kids during Ramadan. So I was hoping you could help me and do me a favor and give this extra money to the people deep in your community that don't have money for those gifts." What happens is, Ma'oz was explaining, and I didn't hear this from Ma'oz because he's too humble to tell it. His wife told me that he really did. But he said that he's making there a partner because he becomes then a partner with a Palestinian to go help someone give a gift to their kid. And remember we were talking about the kids before. And what happens? All of a sudden, the next time Ma'oz makes his car, and all of these things are fixed for free. What happens is his love becomes infectious. This kind of selfless giving. So it just shows that sometimes you have to kind of take that leap of faith, that extra step going outside of yourself. And when you do that that extra reaching, instead of kind of a quid pro quo, or instead of focusing on the fear, you just make that extra leap with a love. Magic happens.
About all the time. Are these things you're going to explore in further just for thought?
Here, I'm judging people favorably, and I finished the script, and Bezrat Hashem, it's going to be done by end of December, maybe a couple of weeks after that. And I want to thank both of you again for making this so wonderful. So I'm so glad you're part of this.
Look at JewishFoodForThought.com, and you can see these animations in their entirety as well as others, and they're just really unbelievably beautiful and thought-provoking.
And again, thank you for making it possible. They're the ones who made it possible, and for Leon for being my first teacher, and for Sandee being such a wonderful interviewer, and forum, this Global Day of Jewish Learning, is just such a terrific concept where people around the world come together for 24 hours to study. I think that that's something wonderful about Judaism, that it's all about asking questions and studying and learning and growing. So I think it's just wonderful. Thank you, Rabbi Steinsaltz, for creating this.
Thank you.